light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. I guess I've always been a combination of diverse qualities and unlikely combinations. I sometimes describe myself as having grown up like a giraffe in a barnyard. No one knew what to do with me. I had all this creativity and an undiscovered gay orientation, and there was just no way I was ever going to fit in, and I figured that out before I even got to kindergarten. And what became of that, I guess, it's an interesting juxtaposition, also an example of what I was just saying, I guess, that in general, tolerance for alternative looking people and creative anomalies and things that are just so completely different seems to be a very urban phenomenon. That if you are going to be really, really different, you kind of belong in a big city, because that's where there is so much diversity already that the people really won't have a problem with it. Except that I grew up in a small town, and as Sister Who, I have found, well, whether in or out of ritual garb actually, I find my greatest spiritual affinity with wilderness places, far from the urban centers, hiking along trails in the woods and climbing mountains and being out in nature. Because there is something so unscripted about that it allows for, I suppose you could say, a life of infinite possibility. It allows opportunity for infinite possibilities. And to some extent, in dressing and looking as I do, it allows me to go anywhere and do anything. I mean, from my hiking boots all the way to my full skirt and yet the tightly fitting sleeves. With my hiking boots, I mean, these hiking boots have literally gone to the tops of mountains. I've climbed 15 of the highest mountains in Colorado. And it's that I want to be equipped to go anywhere, do anything, whatever my imagination can conceive, to say why not instead of why. And in urban environments, there seems to be fewer judgmental attitudes. In small towns such as where I grew up, there seems to be a lot of consternation about being different, or don't you think this is rather shocking? And I always kind of look around and go, what's shocking about it? Or on what basis would you call it shocking? I mean, in all of the 25 years and counting that I've been Sister Who, I have never approached someone with the intention of shocking them or accosting them or challenge them, or I'm going to get in your face about, that's not me. I would rather go deep into meaning and purpose. And it strikes me as an incredibly impoverished existence if someone has to live without a sense of purpose. That you have to come up with a reason for doing everything you do, instead of having something in which you believe so much that it compels your every step. That you may not know what you're going to do next, but because of what you love, you know it will have something to do with this or with that, or whatever your particular passion is. To me, it's kind of like the metaphor of a trail through the woods. Even if it's a trail I've been on before, it may have changed since the last time I was there, either through erosion, where a rock may have rolled onto the path that wasn't there before, and I now have something I have to climb over or around. A tree may have fallen that I have to climb over or around. I may meet someone else on the trail, maybe someone who's also going up but not walking as fast as I am, or maybe someone who's coming down and can tell me what they experienced at the summit, so that as I continue to the summit, I do so with the additional tool in my hands of somebody else's memory as they have described it. Not as they experienced it, because that's a whole nother level. And until or unless we become telepathic, I couldn't possibly understand what it was to experience the hike the way the previous hiker experienced it. But from their report, it gives me more to go on and more to anticipate and more to expect than I would have otherwise had. They may say, for example, that around the corner and just over that rise, there's a whole bunch of deer grazing in the meadow. And, well, that would be a very different event that I couldn't possibly have planned on being there. I mean, no one knows when the deer will be near the trail. On the flip side, there have been times where I went hiking and I was told to be careful because there were mountain lions in the vicinity. I never saw any. They never came chasing after me and my dogs, but supposedly they were there. I have no reason to believe they weren't, but I guess mountain lions by nature are kind of quiet and secretive anyway. Applying all of that as a metaphor to my life, I've been Sister Who for 25 years, but if anyone would have asked me in the first 3 to 5 years where I would be 20 years later, or 10 years later, or even 5 years later, or what would I have done, I couldn't have begun to guess the sorts of things that actually did happen. Until the opportunity was actually presented to me by someone that I had no idea would present it to me, I didn't know that Sister Who would be performing in a chapel service at Iliff School of Theology, a graduate level institution, and that I would be performing a modern sort of morality play with liturgical choruses, all of which I'd written myself. When I first started being Sister Who, the very notion of writing as Sister Who or performing plays as Sister Who or of dealing with deep theology as Sister Who had never even crossed my mind. It seemed this artistic work that had unknown potential, and I was intrigued by it, but I think I was more following my intuition than following any particular preconceived notion that I had about what it would include or what I would do or where I would go. And in this day and age, it seems there are a lot of people who believe in setting goals and pursuing them and working everything toward your goal. And if that works for you, great. I don't mean to cast any discouragement on taking that approach. It's just not the one that has worked for me very well. And when I have tried to apply it, I find I'm rewriting the plan so many times that I can't even remember what the original plan was after a while. But if, on the other hand, especially when I'm in ritual garb, I show up someplace, I say a little prayer, guide my words, may I meet the people I need to see today, just an invitation for good things to happen. And then at the end of the day, I go to my journal and start writing down all the things that had happened, none of which I could have imagined. Who I met and how they responded, and the person who one time wandered into my portable chapel and seemed very pleasant and composed, and I turned around for a second and turned back, and they were sobbing because they had some major problem they were wrestling with that they'd been holding in and holding in and holding in and didn't know how to answer. And so I held them as they cried for a little bit, and then we sat and talked for a while, and we came up with a plan and a strategy and a way of addressing the challenge. And I was very honored and glad that I could be there to help the person at that moment, but I had no idea what the person would need when they stepped through the door. I'm not a mind reader. I may be empathic and psychic to a certain degree, but I'm not a mind reader. And I guess being psychic also, there's a lot of people who talk about being psychic as if it were this science of sorts, this like knowing how to play football or something. And it's really not, because it manifests differently in each person. I guess I would liken it to any of the other five senses. Lots of people can hear things. Some people can hear whether a musical note is on perfect pitch. Some people can hear extremely faint noises. Some people can't hear at all. And so they use other ways of communicating. when it comes to psychic perception, I don't know why, but sometimes certain people perceive certain things, and if you ask them to perceive similar things within a different context, they can't perceive anything. I mean, they try, they close their eyes, they concentrate, they meditate, and nothing comes through. Does that mean that they were making it up before? Well, not necessarily. It's recognizing that there are two sides to it. If you're going to walk into a room and smell a rose has to have been there. Or someone has to have sprayed a fragrance of rose in the room, or some perfume, or something. Somehow that smell got there. It came from something. It didn't just come out of nowhere. If no such fragrance, by any means whatsoever, had ever entered the room, you couldn't go into that room and smell a rose. There wouldn't be anything to smell. If you're looking at a projector screen, and you say it's a white blank projector screen, until you turn on the projector, that's all you can see, is a blank projector screen. And you may not be the one in charge of projector. When you go to a movie theater, you sit in the audience, you don't even see the projector. They're in a little room up behind the back wall, playing the movie out through this tiny little window in the wall. At least that's the way they did when I was a kid. I suppose that begs the question of how long has it been since I've been to a movie theater, whether they're still using it that way or whether there are reverse projection screens now. In any case, that's a whole nother digression that we don't need to go into. I guess the point to me is not to be afraid of how unpredictable life is, and if we want confidence to go forward, even with something as anomalous as Sister Who, as this sort of ritual garb, to trust that when we get to whatever moment is ahead, we will have enough breadth of understanding, enough intelligence, enough analytical tools, enough personal abilities to adapt ourselves to whatever needs we find there. And I'm not thinking of any one particular situation when I say this, because it applies to so many situations. If I had to plan out everything there was about being Sister Who, there would just be no way. I had no way of knowing how the costume would evolve, when I would start calling it ritual garb instead of costume, why I would pick particularly these symbols for my face paint. Various people have mentioned over time that they thought Sister Who looked very shocking, and I never really understood that. To me, it's just different. It's creative, it's metaphors, it's unusual, it's anomalous, but I don't know why it would be shocking. But would I dress up that way in order to shock someone? And I always laugh and say, no, it's far too much work. It takes 3 hours to do all of this face paint and put on the ritual garb and the head wrap and everything else. It's way too much trouble to do it just to be mischievous, go downtown and make somebody jump or something. I have so many other things I need to get done in life. I really don't have time to just put myself out there for no other reason than to disturb somebody. And the point as a sacred clown is not to disturb someone, as it is the intent is to meet someone, invite a dialogue, encourage them to grow, give them a new perspective, a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new way of spreading wings that maybe they didn't even realize they had. And in that, on one hand, to say thank you for the memories, thank you for where I am now, thank you for where I'm going, even though I have no idea what it is. And sometimes that can be really daunting. And there are a lot of current experiences in my life that if I knew this was where it was headed, I think I would have run so hard the other direction. And yet I have to hope and trust and pray that somehow something good is going to come out of this. And really, it's not just that God is supposed to make something good out of it. as much as that I'm supposed to show up and do my work also. That this is an opportunity for me to take a raw material of an uncooperative moment and mold and transform and pack and form it and extend it into a constructive sort of experience, something that can be remembered for years and years and years to come, something that can be described and shared with others, something that may even inspire others that I don't even know are watching. And I may never hear until 5 years from now who it was that was paying attention to the example I set. And I've had similar sorts of conversations to that already, actually, where I was kind of being the adversary saying, but didn't you see how upset I was and how tired I was and how the costume was askew and I had mud on the hem of my skirt from the trail and my feet hurt because of walking 15 miles and they respond, no, what I noticed most was what you said to me. What I noticed most was the fact that you were there redefining what was possible within that space. What I noticed most was that I was somewhere where I expected everything to be normal, and it wasn't. And that's what inspired me to make other choices and go on the path of life that I did. I recall I was at a summer fair once, I think it was, or some kind of street fair, and someone walked up to me and said, "I've seen your TV show and it's very disturbing. Thank you." And we both laughed, and I thanked her for watching, and I said, it's not that I mean it to be disturbing in the nasty sense, but disturbing in the sense of giving you a reason to grow. You know, sometimes I think discontentment is just that sort of prompting that, okay, you've rested long enough, it's time to grow again. You know, don't think that this is the best you will ever be or the most you will ever accomplish. There's a whole lot of living to do yet. There's a whole lot of possibilities that you haven't yet explored. It's kind of like when I had this one particular sewing machine at one time that had all these fancy stitches, and then it had this box full of attachments, and I didn't know what half the attachments did. But when I finally found the owner's manual and started going through it, each page was another experience of, okay, you know how to sew a straight seam. What else can you do? And now you know how to sew a zigzag seam. What else can you do? And now you know how to sew a decorative seam. How about sewing a buttonhole? More and more complicated things. All of these capacities were in the machine from the very first moment. All of our capacities, in some potential way, are within us from the very first moment. But each of us is on a wilderness trail, not sure what or whom we will encounter along the trail, not sure what it will ask of us, whether we will have to balance walking on a log across the stream, whether we will have to take off our shoes and wade through the stream because it's too wide and there is no log and there's no rocks to step on, whether we will find a beautiful little piece of crystal that we want to take home with us, whether we will get to a certain point and decide that it's the perfect place to have lunch because we've been hiking for a long time and it's time to take a break and refuel ourselves. Metaphorically in life, lots of things in human society are oriented toward produce, 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 produce. We also need those moments, like the author Madeleine L'Engle said, of taking time to just be, where we sit down and we look up at the sky and realize that humanity is not in control of everything, that we make contributions, we do this, we do that, we have an impact, but there is so much beyond our control and so much beyond our understanding. And with that awareness, there needs to be a sort of innocence and a sort of humility that we go through each day and moment and step of our lives, willing to learn a little bit more than anything we've encountered so far. And that applies equally to spirituality, that whether it's reading Huckleberry Finn or the Bible or the Quran or the Book of Mormon or the writings of Confucius, whatever it is, to have our hearts open and inviting that which is genuinely wisdom and that which is genuinely love to find a resting place within ourselves. And not just to find a resting place, but also to find an inspiration and an opportunity to not only rest within our hearts, but to flow out through our fingers, to motivate our arms, to reach out to help another, to motivate our feet, to carry us where we need to go, even if it's just one step at a time. That there is someone there or along the way who is unknowingly waiting for us. They don't know that they're going to meet us, and they don't know what a difference it's going to make in their lives. And we don't know what a difference it's going to make in their lives unless we meet them 5 years afterwards to see what the effect was. Life by its very nature is magical. Tragic things do happen. Tragic things, good things, mundane things, boring things, exciting things, all of it is just raw material. The nature of a human being is to be creative and to take whatever it is, and whether you bolt it together or weld it together or glue it together or tape it together, whatever it is you do with this raw material that is your present moment and the creative work of your own life, it has the ability to be more than it is and to reach beyond your current experience and to allow your soul to become bigger than your soul has ever been and to understand things that you've never understood before and to learn things that you didn't even think about learning until the opportunity presented itself. One of the symbols that I carry with me as Sister Who is my own configuration of prayer beads. In the Roman Catholic Church, we would have referred to it as a rosary. I don't know that it's a rosary in the sense of anything directly inspired by Mary, but I suppose it's derivative and inspired. But to me, I carry it as a symbol of the importance of prayer. And it's not even that prayer needs to be to a specific name or person or conception of who and what God is. In prayer, we as a material, I as a material human being, enter into a state of mind and heart by which I open myself to wisdom and love that is beyond me. I invite specifically good things to manifest, to bloom into view the way a flower blooms from this tiny green bud that, initially when a flower develops a bud, you don't even know what color the blossom's going to be until it's almost upon you. And as it gets closer and closer to blossoming, that's when the color begins to become obvious. And when you begin to understand maybe how this flower is going to appear, but not exactly, but just kind of sort of how. Prayer is so much a part of life, but it's not about praying to. It may be about listening. Some people call it meditation. Some people call it sending positive thoughts to one another. I think without some attention to that invisible spiritual activity, that spiritual self-discipline, we never really discover the magic of the invisible who that we are. I invite you to invest time and energy in that, in whatever way you find to be individually appropriate. That however you frame your prayers, whether it's through affirmations or invoking names or sending thoughts or just visualizing love flowing out from you like ripples in a pond, spreading outward from where the rock was thrown into the pond. You take a a crystal, like a seed. You throw it into the water and it lands, and the ripples spread out because of the way that you indirectly touch the water's surface. And the ripples testify to the fact that you made a contribution, possibly even testifying to your contribution long after you've gone. Whatever the path holds, whatever pools you find along the way, leave your fingerprints on it in a way that brings love and wisdom to everyone else who journeys there. It makes life magical when you do. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that my ramblings in the last half hour have been helpful to you. But don't forget to go out and dance your own life and journey your own life and be all the beautiful person that you can be as well. The world's counting on it. Thank you.